Hey, this is Sky. Welcome to my YouTube channel. It's Monday night. Let's get into our California Gangsters. I got the snubby. I got some tea. Set your mood right. Get ready for some mafia stories. I'm going to read scene by scene through all three novels that I wrote. This first one is tentatively titled The California Gangsters. We're just about to start chapter 3. To the homeboy who suggested that I dim the lights and do candles. I can't dim the lights, it's only a switch, and I did try some candles, but it's just too dark and it doesn't work. I'll figure something out, but I did try. Let's just jump into this, and I want to warn you guys, this scene, we're going scene by scene. Some scenes are short, they're only 5-minute videos, some scenes are long. This is a long scene that opens this chapter, so I hope you guys can stay with me. And what's happening is Simon Castro, our main character, we're following him throughout the whole movie, the whole book. I'd like it to be made to a movie. He's on his second night out, his second night with the LA family. So let's jump into it. Chapter 3, The Rabbit Hole. The next morning I got picked up late around 10 p.m. by my Uncle Frank in one of his many Cadillacs. He pulled into the driveway slowly and quietly and flashed his headlights a few times at the house. I saw him coming and waved my arm out the front door to let him know, and then went into the living room where my father was watching the news. The TV was loud and I talked over it and said, "Hey Pop, I'm going out for the night." My father looked over his shoulder a little startled and jumped up and said, "Son, I'm glad you came to say goodbye. Tonight you're going to make me proud. Tonight you'll become a man." I shrugged my shoulders and replied, "A man? Really? Tonight?" I didn't really have that on my agenda, but okay, whatever you say. I'll see you later. I trotted out of the house, down the sidewalk to my uncle's car. I jumped in the passenger seat. Frank looked over his shoulder and slowly pulled out of the driveway very carefully. The second we got to the stop sign at the end of the block, he looked at me and then lit up the rear tires, sending clouds of smoke into the street lights above. Frank was laughing loudly as we sped off into the night. I loved that playful quality about my uncle. He was a good time sort of guy who liked to be wild and party hard. My dad was the exact opposite in almost every way. Frank drove me down to Runyon Canyon and parked near this brand new 2-story apartment building. I had figured we were going into the building for some reason, maybe to collect another debt. I jumped out and went to go open the door for my Uncle Frank, but he swung the door open since he was driving before I could even get over there. He leaned over to the back seat and grabbed a bottle of booze that was under a jacket. He slammed the door and ran across the street towards the entrance of the park. Runyon Canyon is where Errol Flynn used to live. It's a huge city park that has a winding dirt path which leads up a big hill. At the top is an overlook which has the best damn view of Hollywood that you can possibly imagine. Frank walked fast through the old black iron gates into the pitch darkness of the park. I could barely see him as he turned around and said to me, "Come on, kid, follow me." I'm not a woodsman, and I don't like going into the woods at night, but I reluctantly followed him into the darkness against all of my better judgment. Frank was walking up the hill fast for a fat guy with stubby little legs. As we winded up the steep hill, I caught glimpses of the moonlight peeping through the canopy of trees, which illuminated the path in spots to show me the way ahead. I had always trusted my uncle growing up, but I was with him last night when he just killed a guy, and maybe he felt like I was a liability. The whole time I followed him up the hill, I had a strange fear in the back of my mind that maybe he was taking me to my doom. Maybe the reason why he was leading me up this path into the darkness was to kill me. I started to form a few ideas of how I would defend myself if I had to, God forbid. Frank was ahead of me, and as I neared to the top of the hill, the trees opened up, and I could see the bright stars above. Frank was in a silhouette, standing at the top of the hill, with his liquor bottle clutched in one hand. When I reached the top, Frank searched his front pocket and pulled out a crumpled up joint. He did his best to straighten the poor thing out and lit it up with a shiny gold Zippo. He puffed a huge cloud of smoke into the air that dissipated into the hills behind us. He was bent over, holding the joint away from himself and spitting up chunks of phlegm and coughing profusely. I stood there laughing at him. Frank finally got hold of himself and looked over at me with a bright red face. He said, "You don't get off until you cough, right, kid?" I grabbed the joint from his extended hand, taking a few small tokes off of it, and replied, "Wow, that's some tasty weed." Frank said, "Kid, I got the best pot in the world. You'll only smoke the best shit when you're around me, but we gotta be cool with it. The family frowns heavily upon any kind of drug use." I took a few more hits off the joint, standing close to the edge of the cliff, looking at the twinkling lights of the city. It was such a clear night, I could see all the way downtown. I could see spotlights beaming up into space, promoting some sort of event off in the distance. The spotlights were a common sight in Hollywood, but they always reminded me of the bat signal from the comic books. Frank popped his liquor bottle open and took a huge swig, then passed it to me. He said, "This liquor is the best you can buy, and it's a big part of the family history. This booze is the same recipe that was used back in the old days when your grandfather first started the Syndicate." This bottle was obviously purchased from the grocery store and not at a speakeasy, but it's the same stuff. Big O and those Mexicans, they sure did make everyone in the Syndicate rich back in the Prohibition days. I took a small sip from the bottle, handed it back to my uncle, keeping the joint to puff on a little more. I replied, "What's the Syndicate? Is that the same as the LA family?" Frank looked over to me with the moonlight shining down on his face, illuminating his glowing eyes in the darkness like a demon. He replied, "The Syndicate, or the company as most of us call it, is who really runs California. They're the top of the criminal pyramid at this point. It used to just be the LA family. But your grandfather had a bright idea back in the 1930s. I replied, "My grandfather started the Syndicate?" Frank continued, "Carl Castro, your granddad, brought together the various mob bosses from the most powerful organizations in Los Angeles into one governing body that runs all the rackets in town. It's very similar to the commission back east, except for this is California, and we do things a little bit differently. The LA family, which your grandfather was never a part of, is only one of the members of the board of directors, and just a piece in the puzzle. The board is made up of 4 separate mobs that have been in this city for many generations, and would have otherwise been enemies, if not for your grandfather. At the table of the board of directors sat your grandfather's famous mob, the Downtown Gangsters. It's the very oldest mob in Los Angeles, outside of the family. The LA family, or La Cosa Nostra, of course, was brought to the table because of politics. The Jewish Mafia, or as we jokingly call them, the Kosher Nostra, was also there. And then last but not least, the Mexican Mafia was eventually brought to the table as well. The Syndicate has now snowballed, and it is a corporate monster run by criminals who think they're executives. This is why we call it the company. Now, Simon, listen here. You will be killed for talking bad about the Syndicate, even to other made guys in the family. So, we like to speak about it in hushed circles. Be careful who you talk to about this. Capiche? I replied, yes, I understand. Frank, I know I'm supposed to do whatever you say and not ask questions, but why the hell did you bring me all the way up here? What are we doing on this damn cliff in this creepy old park? We could have smoked a joint back in the car. Frank put the cap on the bottle and set it down next to him in the grass, making sure it didn't fall over. He took out his .45 pistol that was stashed under his shirt behind his back. He passed it to me, handle first. So if you guys don't know how to pass a gun to somebody, you pass it to them with the handle first. But you don't pass a gun to your enemy, and you don't pass it to them usually with bullets. But let's get back to the story. I grabbed the heavy pistol, pointed the barrel at the closest tree to me, which was probably only 10 yards away, and then pulled the trigger slowly. The shot rang out with a bang. The loud blast echoed through the valley below like a crack of thunder. I thought it rang out across the whole city, all the way down to the beach. I said, holy shit, that was loud. I don't think I hit anything, though. Oh, sorry, Frank. I might not be a good shooter. My uncle happily trotted over to the tree. He went around a large rock and through some tall weeds. He looked at the bark really closely with his lighter that flickered in the breeze. He looked back over his shoulder and yelled to me, "You hit it dead in the center. Don't apologize for nothing. Give yourself credit, kid. You're a natural with a gun. That's better than I can do. And I just killed a guy last night." I replied, "Really? Wow. That's the first time I've ever shot a gun. Let me take another shot. That was exciting. It got my heart pumping." Frank came running back over and said, "Now fuck that, let's go. You're ready as far as I'm concerned. That's enough training as you need. Your pop said to teach you to shoot, so there we go. You know how to shoot." I gave a sigh and replied, "Come on, just one more shot. I want to shoot something." Frank grabbed his bottle from the wet dew soaked in the grass. He said, "Oh, you will, trust me. Hey, do you want another hit off this bottle? Big O's famous brand of whiskey is part of our family history. Did I tell you that already? Let me tell you the story of it." I took the bottle and laughed at my drunk uncle. I replied, "You told me. And honestly, I don't give a rat's ass about the history. This shit is nasty. It's like drinking fucking gasoline. I'd rather just smoke that joint." When Frank and I got back to the car, I opened up his door for him, and he said to me, "You keep that gat at all times, capiche? Even when you're shitting, showering, or shaving. We carry 24/7. That's a West Side rule. That's how we do it in my crew." I stuffed the gun in my waistband behind my back and felt like a real gangster for the first time. I got in the car as Frank found a good radio station. I adjusted the mirror and fixed my hair a little bit. We tore off into the night, floating over potholes and bumps of the old Hollywood streets. I still had what was left of the joint we were smoking in the park, and tried to take a hit as I was driving. Frank grabbed it from me, took a few puffs, and I felt pretty relaxed around him. I was starting to settle in with my uncle and accept the fact that this was going to be my new life. Okay, let's stop here and we'll get to the next scene next Monday. Thanks for watching.